All right, today we're going to build a fortress. Not with, stone and mortar, but with strategy and code. We are going to walk through the complete blueprint for creating a really solid vulnerability management program. Think of it as your organization's digital fortress against cyber threats. So let's get started.
So here's how we're going to build this thing, broken down into 6 key stages. First, we lay the foundation. Then, we'll draw up the blueprints and craft the detailed plan. After that, it's time to put it all into action, figure out how to report and fix any flaws we find, and finally, how to keep those walls strong for the long haul.
Every great building starts with a solid foundation. And for our digital fortress, that means we have to understand exactly what vulnerability management is. This is the bedrock. Everything else we do is going to be built right on top of this.
So what is it, really? Well, it's a structured process. It's not just random guesswork. It's a deliberate cycle of finding the cracks in your walls, the weaknesses an attacker could use, then figuring out how serious they are, and finally, getting them fixed.
And this is absolutely crucial. This is not a one-and-done thing. It's not some security audit you do once a year. It's a continuous, living process. Imagine having guards constantly walking the walls. The intel they gather affects everything else you do, from how you patch your systems to how you set up new ones. Okay, so we've got the foundation down. Now it's time to draw up the blueprints. This is where we define the high-level vision for our fortress, and, this is a big one, get everyone to actually agree with the plan.
And let's be really clear here, this part is non-negotiable. A strong program doesn't kick off with some fancy new tool. It starts with a clear, solid commitment from the leadership. Because without that buy-in, the second it has to compete for time or money, it's going to get shoved aside and the whole thing just crumbles.
These pillars are the huge strategic decisions that leadership has to make. You start by defining your borders, like what are we even protecting? Then you figure out who all the stakeholders are, give the security team real authority, and, of course, give them the resources they need. And all of this has to line up with how much risk the organization is willing to take on.
All right, we've got the leadership's blessing. Our strategy is in place. Now we can finally move from the why to the how. It's time to draft the really detailed architectural plans for our fortress.
So what does that look like? Well, it means designing the specific workflow, picking out your tools like scanners and analysis platforms, and plugging in crucial data sources. I'm talking about your internal asset inventory or maybe some external threat intelligence feeds. A solid communication plan is also key, and so is a crystal clear system for classifying the threats you uncover.
And this chart here shows a really important part of that plan. See, not all vulnerabilities are created equal. A critical one, that's like a giant gaping hole in your main gate. You got to fix that like yesterday. But a low severity issue might be more like a tiny crack in a faraway tower wall, so you've got a little more time. Setting these expectations up front saves so many arguments down the road.
Okay, the planning is done, blueprints are approved, it's time to pick up the tools and actually start building. This is the implementation phase, where the real work begins.
The rollout kicks off with that first big scan. That's how you create your baseline, basically a complete map of your current defenses and all their weak spots. From there, it's just this ongoing cycle of finding things, telling the people who could actually fix them, and, this is a big one, making this security mindset part of the process for any new development.
Now here's a little modern-day wrinkle for you. When you're using cloud services, you don't actually own the land your fortress is built on. The provider might not let you scan their infrastructure. In those cases, your best defensive tools are actually your contracts and your service-level agreements to make sure your vendor is holding up their end of the security bargain.
So the walls are up, but the work is never, ever over. Now comes the day-to-day job of patrolling the battlements. See, finding the flaws is only half the battle. The other half is managing them effectively and keeping everyone's trust in the system. And when you're on patrol, you can make 2 really big mistakes. The first is a false positive. That's your guard shouting about a threat that turns out to just be a shadow. Do that too often and people stop paying attention. But even worse is the false negative, the hidden threat. This is when the guard totally misses an assassin who's already inside the walls, which creates this incredibly dangerous false sense of security.
And that's exactly why managing these errors is so critical. Accuracy isn't some nice-to-have, it's the currency of trust for the whole program. If people don't trust your reports, they're just not going to act on them. Simple as that. So, when you do find a real flaw, the response has to be organized. A good remediation plan doesn't just say, hey, this is broken. It assigns a specific person to fix it, gives them a hard deadline, tells them how success will be measured, and lays out the exact process to follow. It's all about accountability.
And that brings us to the final and maybe most important stage. A fortress is never really finished. The bad guys are always coming up with new ways to attack, so your defenses have to constantly be getting better through continuous improvement.
So where do you focus? This chart breaks it down for us. You should constantly be asking, are our scanning tools doing a good job? Are our teams actually fixing things effectively? And is our communication clear and getting people to act? It becomes this data-driven cycle of getting better and better.
And a huge part of this is just being transparent. You have to share the wins, absolutely, the attacks you stopped, but you also have to be honest about the failures and the near misses. That kind of honesty is what builds real, lasting trust with leadership and keeps the support for the whole program going.
So, your digital fortress is built. The walls are up, the guards are on patrol. But the world outside those walls is changing every single day. The real question isn't just, how strong is my fortress today? It's, is my process for improving it ready for whatever threats are coming tomorrow?